Hello, friends. Welcome to the Logistics of Logistics podcast. My name is Joe Lynch. Thank you so much for joining us today. Today's topic is the Skill Gap Epidemic, how untrained workers are holding you back, with my friend Cary Dittmann. How's it going, Cary?
Real well. Thanks, Joe.
So, Cary, please introduce yourself and your company and where you're calling from today.
Sure. My name's Cary Dittmann, and I'm the COO of FreightPath. I reside in the Chicago suburbs. Been with the company since its founding. I'm a co-founder, which is in 2024, beginning of 2024. We're an online e-learning company specializing in supply chain itself. Customers are both include teams, individuals, or enterprises as well.
Nice. And so I've talked to you guys before, and I've spent a lot of time with you at conferences. You guys specialize in the kind of training that you more or less can't get at a university or anywhere else because it's specific to the supply chain stuff that I don't think the universities are getting better and better, but I think that they're not quite there yet on like freight forwarding and all of the nuances and all the jargon that we have in our world.
There's just a few of those, Joe. I think we have 8,000 in our glossary alone on acronyms. But yeah, it's an interesting point. We haven't seen anything like it out there as far as the training that we offer, supply chain specific, and being more practical in context. So it's the nuts and bolts cutting across really the global supply chain. So whether it's ocean or air, surface transportation, ground transportation, you think of dangerous goods, you think of Incoterms, you think of geography. There's a lot of components. It's one of the largest business fields in the world. It's quite ranging.
Yeah. And you think about this, and this is true everywhere. I talk to a lot of people, obviously, as a podcaster. The bar is going higher and higher. The shippers that we work with, and I know you also work with shippers, but the shippers that most of the people listening, 60% are going to be logistics providers. The bar just gets higher and higher. And we're being asked to do with less. And people are saying, yeah, use AI. Yeah, it's a magic wand. I don't have enough good people, but I got AI. That's not the right answer. To take advantage of AI and all the other opportunities out there, you need a skilled workforce. And they could have just graduated from a supply chain program from one of these great universities that have these programs and might still not know what is expected at a freight forwarder or a freight brokerage or at a warehousing company.
Yeah. Sidebar point that I talked to a high executive up in one of these big freight forwarder on the East Coast, and he just got done interviewing a couple of graduates from some respected schools on the supply chain side, and he said to me, he says, "Funny you ask Cary about what do they learn? What do they know? It's more theoretical for the most part, and when you start thinking about the practical content." They couldn't answer what was a TEU, or one gentleman said, Africa is a country. So it got he just shook his head and was just trying to understand it, knowing that they just came out of a 4-year university. Not to put them down that way, but I'm just saying it's the practical.
We were all young and dumb. Now we're old and less dumb, hopefully.
More learned.
But getting back to TEU, to 20 equivalent unit, for anyone who's wondering, it refers to the size of the containers and the volume of the containers. But anyway, getting back to it, that's the nature of almost all of our education, unless you're in a very technical class at a company where they said we're being trained in this software. And I call what you guys do just-in-time training, meaning I need it now and I get it now, as opposed to, oh, Cary, you want to make a switch and work in supply chain? I recommend you go back to college for 4 years. You're like, no, I can't go back to college for 4 years. You need, and I think with the title we have here, companies are struggling with talent. And it's a problem right now where the space is still a little slow. But that doesn't mean that you still don't have that challenge. It just means you're trying to do more with less. And when you're trying to do more with less, and you also have a team that, for whatever reason, hasn't gotten the experience and the knowledge that you want them to have, how are you ever going to consistently meet your results?
Yeah. And you got to think about training, upskilling your own people but also the new people that are coming into play. So that's important.
So who's your customers?
So we have, and I mentioned earlier, it's individual. So we have a storefront as well. So individuals can buy courses one at a time. And we also then serve companies, and companies could be freight forwarders, logistics companies. They could also be BCOs, the beneficial cargo owners,
The
shippers
shippers.
that also have logistics and transportation needs, and they have individuals that manage the day-to-day for themselves, some more than others, depending on if they have a forwarder that manages a lot of that, or maybe they do more on their own and they really need the skill sets on the supply chain side. So that, and then enterprise, there are customers that are looking for a more customized solution. They want to address different levels within their organization. They want to create career paths within their organization to train people. And so that's really our base of customers.
Yep. And it comes up on my podcast probably once a quarter, which is we're all trying to recruit, train, and retain the very best people. If you don't train people and they don't seem to progress in their career, you aren't going to retain them. And there are some times, and I've seen this stats not lately, but if somebody gets a job and they don't get trained and they don't ever feel like they got the right orientation, they're very likely to quit.
Yes.
Lack of orientation is a major reason people quit. And by the way, for the most part, none of us say, hey, welcome aboard. Here's your orientation. It's have Cary show you how to do that job. It's beyond the job training begins, which is haphazard. And I guess we've all survived it, but there's a better way.
Yeah, a lot of companies, and I've been in this business 40 years, probably 20 of it more on the operational logistics company side, and then another 20 on the technology side, serving the supply chain space. But yeah, you look at people that have been in an air freight role, managing the exports for 25 years, and they may have other abilities, or they may get picked up by somebody else, is what generally happens, and then they move to another company. So there's a lot of moving around where we're picking from other companies, but training that talent and giving them the opportunity to look at other components of supply chain can help from a retention standpoint for these companies in a big way. There's a lot of people that say, wow, I never even worked on ocean, but I'd love to work on ocean. I've always wanted to check that out, do something. You take the training courses, and then you have that ability to do that.
Yeah. Early in my career, I worked in automotive engineering, and I was a designer. We were on the drafting board and then the CAD systems. And I always remember we didn't get training usually at these jobs. And then I remember quitting jobs because a recruiter would call and say, hey, here, we'll give you a little more money to go down the street. And sometimes I quit because I was like, I just was given a project that I don't know how to do the work. And I don't know how I would have known how to do it. No one showed me. So I'd quit because I'm making more money going down the street. But just as important, I'm quitting because I don't know what I'm doing. And if you think I don't know what I'm doing, I'm going to get fired anyway, why wouldn't I take the job going down the street?
You get frustrated in some of these roles, and you see it all the time. There are so many supply chain roles that are open right now in the U.S.
Yep. And it's not just sales.
And it's not just sales. No, it's actually operational is probably some of the bigger ones.
Yep. Cary, tell us how you guys are involved with CSCMP. And by the way, CSCMP is Council for Supply Chain Management Professionals. They have a conference coming up in Maryland in October.
Yes. The EDGE conference. We attended that last year. They came to be. They're a 60+ year organization that those that know of them, they've been in the business for a long time, primarily supporting education and networking. They got over 200,000 members and affiliates on a global basis. They're big. They put together some SC Pro courses around supply chain that cover a big section of the business and training. They're e-learning type courses as well. But when we came to them and met with Mark Baxa is their CEO. I've known him for years. I used to call on him when I was with a company, and he was with Monsanto. So his background's all supply chain as well. And we started talking about what we were doing as an e-learning company, more on the global supply chain side with our courses. And he said, wow, this is a perfect way. We should get together. We're looking to try to expand on the SC Pro courses that we offer, a platform that could help them sell those courses. And we'd love to incorporate your courses at the same time. So we've got a program today, an agreement where we share those courses with each other, and we're doing some things on the soon to be on the high school level and university level with a lot of those courses. They have a 501c3 talent center that's part of their organization. They take donations and they're turning that around into giving those to a lot of the high schools and universities around the country that are in need of those types of career opportunities with the type of training that we can provide. So that to me is the most exciting thing that we're doing. I think there's a lot there because as baby boomers move on, the biggest gap today is to take the younger learners and bring them into the supply chain. And I think the pandemic has done a lot to spread the word with regard to what supply chain is. 7-8 years ago at Christmas dinner, and somebody asked you what you do for a living, and you said supply chain. They really didn't understand what you did. Today, it's a lot better known. And we've been talking to some of the high schools and some of the universities, and they're trying to put supply chain more into the curriculum because of the job opportunities that are there. So I think that's a big area for us, and CSEMP is a great partner.
Yeah. And I think it gives a lot of credibility to your organization that you are I think when we were at CSCMP, they said you guys are their learning partner. I don't know if they use exactly that word, but I remember it being part of the presentation. So
yes,
can't get a better organization than CSCMP. By the way, I will put a link to my interview with Mark Baxa in the show notes so people can reach out. By the way, I will also put a link to your LinkedIn profile, a link to your website, any other links you give me, I'll put those in the show notes. So tell us a little bit about you, Cary. Where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? Some career highlights before you started this company, FreightPath.
Sure. And it's always interesting the way people, when you ask them, how'd you get into supply chain? And I always love the stories. For me, I went to Fenton High School, which is in Bensonville, Illinois. After I graduated, I was doing some odd jobs. Then I decided to go to junior college, so College of DuPage. And while I was going to college, one of the neighbors came running down the street, talked to my dad, and said, "Hey, they're hiring at Continental Airlines. You got to get your son over there and apply." So sometimes it's about connections. I'm not sure exactly what happened, but I was in a group interview that I've never been to before like that, with probably 30 people sitting there. I got the job. I got one of the jobs, and I was throwing bags for Continental Airlines, but they were bringing people on to get them 6 months up to speed on their business. And then they did servicing for all the other airlines like Lufthansa, Mexicana, Aer Lingus. And so I started working with Seaboard World Airlines at the time. And Seaboard was the largest transatlantic air cargo carrier. So that's kind of where I cut my teeth into getting into the business. And once I got hooked with that, I did operations and then customer service for Flying Tigers. Some people know Flying Tigers. They were acquired by FedEx, but they were the largest trans-Pacific 747 carrier at the time. So I did customer service for them and then field sales. That's what kind of got me into the sales side. But I think the big thing that I learned there was how important the operational piece was to the sales roles that I had into the future. That was key. Yeah, several other sales opportunities with American Airlines, Emery Worldwide. I was EVP of marketing and sales for Panalpina, which I traveled an awful lot. I think I burned through 2 passports my first year. Didn't see the kids as much, which was unfortunate. And then the last few years before P44, I was with Clear Metal that was acquired by Project 44. So more of the technology.
Oh, yeah, I interviewed the founder of Clear Metal before it got bought by Project 44.
Ah, yes, Adam Campaign. Adam, great guy. And that was a great product. And technology was so important. And you had to really understand operationally who you're selling to ask the right questions. And I think that's where the training piece for me kind of came into be. my days at Panalpina is where I met John Delgado, who's our CEO. And John was a recruiter in the business. I had about a 70-person team, and I was expanding North America to put global accounts in place. We stood up a whole cold chain program for them in North America that they didn't have before, and learned a lot there for sure. So that's my background.
So you went to P44. Was P44 the last? So Clear Metal got bought by P44. Was that your last gig before you started this company?
I did some work with one of the co-founders of GT Nexus that had a company, another technology company that I spent about a year with.
Very nice. You're a perfect example of this industry, how you can rise to the top without a traditional 4-year degree. And I think that's some of the stuff that you guys are bringing to come. Basically, you're bringing the programs to a lot of these logistics companies so somebody can get trained and have some credibility behind it. Because there's one thing, you get all the on-the-job training you want, and in some regards, people don't respect it. But if you can say, yes, this is a program that is connected with CSCMP and lots of people have been through it, it's different. And I think given the cost of college and our demand for heads in this business, to your point, that the next generation is smaller. And as the baby boomers, a big cohort, leave the field, we're going to need to get some people into this business, and they don't all need a 4-year degree. Nothing against it, but you got people who have a 4-year degree who still don't understand this business. They still go through your program.
That's the point, right? There's a couple avenues, and you can go take the 4-year degree and take supply chain as a major, and there's job opportunities that direction. But I still think you need the practical experience at the same time. So I would even encourage the types of courses that we have to really learn the terminology and the acronyms in this business. And then there's the high school side of it that, again, taking a warehouse job, or there's some very good paying jobs out there, and having some credentials like a certificate of completion from our business on a couple different key topics would stand out, let's say, in a resume being looked at by people.
Yeah, for sure. So again, today's topic is the skill gap epidemic, how untrained workers are holding you back. So before we hit the record button, we talked about 3 things I want to touch on here. And the first thing that's holding you back, talk about that. What is one of those things that you say, yeah, because my workers aren't trained, we're not getting where we need to go? What is that?
Yeah, we're not meeting our business objectives, right? We're not accomplishing what we want to do as a company. Talking about companies that we would talk to and trying to understand what their challenges might be from a training aspect.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm glad you said it that way, because so often training gets put in this weird bucket where it's, oh, we got to train our people. Why? Well, why don't we train them? We train them because there's a gap. There's a gap in their knowledge, and that gap in their attitude, skills, and knowledge that is causing a business gap, right? We're not meeting our objectives because we don't have the team.
Yes.
And by the way, that is the norm. We do a good job with on-the-job training, but as everybody goes in this business, remote has always been a thing. So you might have somebody in Omaha, and you got people in California, you got people in New York. How do you train all of them? And if you do have a remote workforce, it's even more difficult because there's not that veteran sitting next to you.
That's right. That's a difficult thing.
I will throw one other thing out there, Cary, is I'm a big believer that you should be knowledgeable and an expert in a supply chain. Not just, oh, I'll get you a truck or we have software. You should understand the business of the people who you're selling to. I think 10, 15 years ago, you could be very transactional about, I'll get you a truck or you can store stuff here. Now I think the expectation is you understand my business. You guys are industrial logistics experts or automotive logistics or retail logistics experts. And so if you don't understand what's upstream of you or what downstream of you or what the vertical that you're in does,
yes,
how can you succeed?
How do you ask the right questions? And we see it and when you think about technology, and going back to my career, maybe 20 years ago when that kind of took place and started on the technology side, 3PLs, you went to them for your visibility. You went to them for managing your business holistically that way. And then these technology companies started cropping up, right? So all the conferences you go to today, that's what in a lot of the booths is all the technology. And so that technology has brought on a lot of people that need to sell that technology, and they need to understand what they're selling. And they need to understand who they're selling to and what problems they're trying to solve. And I think that's where we're seeing a big interest in our e-learning that can help bridge some of those areas where that individual might come into a role that, hey, they have air freight experience, but they don't have the trucking side or the ocean side, and they're selling to somebody that needs both. And but there's good salespeople, but they really need to get that in their heads better.
A good sales guy, ideally, or good sales gal, ideally, has deep industry knowledge. And we've all been in positions where you say, I don't exactly know what's going on in this. It's a horrible feeling. And I will throw one other thing in there is when we talk about training, I think so often we just say they don't know this, so we'll just give them a book. It's really attitude, skills, and knowledge. So you have to have all three. See, skills might be the ability to talk to people. I need the skill to be able to pick up the phone or use a computer. I think most people we work with have those. But do they have knowledge of the industry? And do they have the right attitude to go in and do that job? We take it for granted that, oh, customer service, that's just doing the right thing. There's certain things you can learn about customer service. And if you don't have the attitude, skills, and knowledge, you're going to fail. And when you fail, that means the company does not meet objectives.
Yeah, the customer service aspect, and that's a good one, which is if people had a better understanding or contextually the supply chain more end to end, they might either ask the right questions when they're on a conversation with a customer, or the customer might say something that would trigger a thought to bring up about another business opportunity that maybe they could get, because that's really what it's all about. Customer service is managing the business you have, but it's also uncovering new opportunities as well, if you're doing it right, my opinion.
Yep. I think also I'm not gonna pin all. I don't like when people categorize a whole group, a whole generation of people like, oh, the boomers do this, the Gen Z do this. But as we're all on our phones more, I feel like there's less human interaction. And I think if you grew up having to provide customer service because you served ice cream and then worked at a bar and you said, yeah, I've done all those jobs and I learned it because I didn't have a phone. Oh, some of the younger people today, but it's also old people, play on their phones so much that I think there's a gap in their customer service. And by the way, I was just over the weekend, I was at a few parties and I noticed there's people who are there who are sitting at a table looking at their phone. I was like, so you came to this party to look at your phone. So, and by the way, they're not the Gen Zs. they're on the older side of the population.
You get that habit. It's a terrible habit. And I remember going to dinner with the family, and I'd always have the kids shut the phones off. You got to spend 20 minutes here at the table having dinner.
It's going to be very painful, but you're going to have to look at me and your mother and talk.
Yes, you're going to have to do that. You're going to have to do that. No, that's a difficult thing. We got some new courses rolling out too that are more on the soft skills side, email management, and then customer service as well, just how to communicate internally within the company. Some people don't, some younger folks and older folks too. How do you write an email the right way? How do you structure it to where, and who do you put on copy? And so there's a lot more to it.
It's a lot better if you can say, hey, we trained, everybody's on the same page because we showed them how to do this. And it reminds me when I was still in the logistics business, I would always say to my team, hey, if that shipment's late, get on the phone, call them. And then sometimes they go, hey, Cary, did you call so-and-so? Cary would say, I texted him. I was like, that's not the same. I need you to hear his voice. Is Cary angry or says, no, that's not a problem. I appreciate the call. And when you get an okay back from him, it tells me very little. So I used to always say, you call Cary up, say, I'm sorry, your shipment's late. Here's what we're doing. Here's the new, and I'm going to follow up with an email and confirm, and I'm going to copy my boss, and I'll make sure we put a notation in the TMS or whatever is required. And those little things matter. So later on, when I don't send that email because I sent Cary a text and he said, okay, I don't have that record in my system. Nobody sent an email. It's not in the TMS comments. So I feel like those little things is how you do business. Everybody does it the same way. And if I'm brand new to the business, and you could be 50 years old and brand new to the business, maybe you don't know that's how it's done here. And there's a million little things like that in our business.
There is. And I take some of these courses too, that I've taken several of them, that I learn something every time. It may be a topic I think I know, but there's always room to learn. So that's important.
So the first thing we talked about is not meeting business objectives. And the reason we're not is because my team doesn't have the attitude, skills, and knowledge necessary to do the work. Next is there's this, and I wrote this down for our conversation earlier, but there's a lack of shared vision, shared knowledge, shared language that we would all get. If we all took the same course and we all sat and we might have talked about it and it became part of our process, part of our procedures, we all understand what blank means. Cary doesn't interpret it different than Tom or Larry or Sue, right? We can't have that.
Right. Yeah, no, that's super important in these companies, all companies, right? It's, you have to have a goal and you got to have a vision, but you got to make sure everybody else is on the same page of that. And same with the knowledge side of it, right? So same with the experience and knowledge, but they both come hand in hand. And that's the foundation of having a good team.
This industry has been traditionally done fairly well, but it's been tribal knowledge, and we'll count on the veterans, and the veterans know how to do it. But I gotta say, hey, this guy's been in this business for 25 years. He's learned all the lessons he needs to learn over those 25 years, and he's delivering results for his customers, my customers, and it works. But I got a new guy, and he's 30 years old. He just got in this business, but we consider him high potential, but he doesn't have that experience. He doesn't have the knowledge. He has never been exposed to this business until recently, and he's not getting the same results. No one wants to be on that team that's not getting the results. None of your customers want to be on the other end of those inconsistent results. So how do you upskill that guy so the 30-year-old can do a lot of the things that the 50-year-old can do?
Yeah. Yeah. It's got to be. And one of the practices we do when we get into a company, we're assessing. So we're looking at doing an assessment around where is that knowledge? Who's got which knowledge? Some have more knowledge in different areas because that's been their background than others. And so they may be on a different career path or learning pathway, as we call it. And we're able to put those together. So help these companies pull different teams of people together that might need more emphasis on these skills and these topics and subject areas than this group over here. And we have several customers like that today. That's how they looked at our organization and the tools, the learning tools that were at play, and said, hey, here's how I'd like to mix it up. So we're in the process of creating some of those learning pathways as well, based on our experience and knowledge of what companies are doing.
So you guys can say, hey, for the guy who is going to be managing freight forwarding from Europe, we're going to give him these 5 modules or these 7 modules, whatever it is. The guy who's doing the over the road is going to get maybe slightly different modules. But anytime you need to up that skill level in a specific area, you have a module for it. And I do use the term just-in-time learning. I've heard other people say it, and I love it because it's how we want to learn. I don't want to take a class. I want to go down the hall or off-site and learn about something, and they say, someday, Joe, you might need this. Great. I'm glad I'm wasting today to understand this. Then I get back to my desk. I answer my 100 emails that I missed. What I'd rather do is when I need something is say, hey, can you show me how to do this? That's what we've done, the tribal knowledge. But now I don't have to bug the guy who sits next to me Now I can take a class at my desk and I can take it over and over again until it sinks in.
Yeah, no, that's what we've found, at least, that most people in the U.S., right? In Europe, there's a lot of apprenticeship type programs. You can do that here as well, but what we're finding is a lot of folks want a more succinct, modular. We've created these modular e-learning courses that are maybe an hour or 2 hours. And I think that's really taken off or taken on a different interest level. We do it they can take it on their phone as well. They could do it on a mobile device, or they can do it sitting down at a computer. And I think that's really also key, right? You have to spend the time to learn. It's not a bunch of videos all the time. It can be some mixed in there, but it's really reading, understanding what you read, going back and getting quizzed on what you read, and then taking a test at the end. That's how you learn. At least that's the studies that have been done along the way.
And by the way, once you've taken a course and you go, now I know some of the things to ask for. So I might go to YouTube and say, I took the course. Now I want to go a little deeper. Maybe jump over here and look online. I know the questions to ask now. I remember early in my career in automotive, there's so much jargon. There's so many things I didn't understand. And back then, there were dumb questions. So people didn't, you didn't ask questions. I didn't want to expose my lack of knowledge. And so I remember looking stuff up in engineering books or asking somebody like after the meeting, hey, what the hell did they mean by this? We didn't have the internet then. I'm dating myself here, but now we can educate ourselves a lot better once we have that foundation. And I think the nature of delivering training is saying, we're asking you to take this course and feel free to ask any dumb questions. This is the time. And as you get older, you don't worry about asking dumb questions. But young people, man, I didn't want to expose my ignorance. It was probably exposed anyway, but I didn't want to expose it any more than I had to.
But that's exactly what I heard from this young intern. We were talking to a company, and this intern happened to be in the meeting to hear about what we're doing with training and the interest level. And he said at the end, geez, I wish I would have had some of this training ahead of time, because I just got done spending 3 months here within the company. I had to go from department. And my challenge was not that I wasn't taught by good individuals, but it was a lot of the acronyms. I didn't know what they were, and I didn't want to ask, or I didn't want to slow it down if I would have known all of the terminology and acronyms that I was jumping into. So that's really the key way that we're learning that as we go along too, but trying to combine on the job with specific training that you're taking at the same time. That's a great way to learn. But
I love it. So the first thing we talked about as a problem is not meeting business objectives. And the reason you're not meeting is because your team doesn't have the attitude, skills, and knowledge they need to succeed. And again, I suspect it's like most companies, it's going to be spotty. Some people know it, some people don't. You might even have a different understanding of the same problem just because of where you came from. And so this speaks also to this lack of shared vision, shared knowledge, shared understanding of what we're doing and how we're doing it. I think if one team is having great results because they have a veteran and the team right next to them doesn't get great results because they have a younger team with less experience, that's a problem. Before we hit the record button, I was saying to you, think about like your favorite teams, whether it's baseball team or football team. Those guys know everything about. So they say, I might be the shortstop, but I understand exactly what every player on this team is supposed to do.
Has to do.
And there's no wondering, hey, there's a two minutes left in the game. What should we do? Everybody knows we've been doing the 2-minute drill a million times in practice. This is the same thing. We don't practice in business. We get training instead. Talk to us about a case study. You don't mention names if it's not appropriate, but talk about one of your customers that has had some success. First off, talk about the problems they were having, the reason they finally took your call and said, okay, Cary, tell us what we're doing wrong. What were the problems they were having? What did you bring to them? And then what are the results?
Yeah. Top of mind, one company that I can think of is used us in a special way, more, I say customized, but just more more in a way where they knew they had to train their teams, but they knew their teams had different levels of skills, right? So they liked our idea of mixing that up a bit, right? So being able to create a learning pathway for one group within the organization and then another one for another group in the organization. And some were at different levels. Training is about the basics, training is about maybe more intermediate learnings and then more expert learnings. And that's the way our structure is laid out with the various course offerings that we have. And it's trying to match that to the right people, so you can bring them all up to the same level without overloading those that maybe have that knowledge in one area already. So this was very intriguing to them, and I would say it was a great way that we were able to obtain their business, but then measure that they're having conversations today on the success of that training as teams. And so we're participating in those meetings, understanding examples of where those learnings have paid off. And they've already come back and said, I need more for some new folks coming on board right now, because we want to bring them up to speed with this other group. The types of training in these, and what we're finding in these organizations, is that it's continual, right? It's not a one and done type of training program. It has to be, whether it's more on a subscription basis or more of a segmented out within your organization. Companies are starting to really look at that. Now, different companies, and I'll say this because I think it's important, different companies have different levels of HR support and learning and development support. The bigger the company, you sometimes have a learning management system in place already. And maybe some of the mid-sized to smaller organizations, whether they're BCO, shippers, or they're 3PL or supply chain organization or technology, they don't have a learning management system. So we become their platform. We come in, we're able to give them that platform to take the learning on that platform and to give them a landing page for their team, so it looks like their own academy, if you will, of training. That was a big thing for us that we were able to do, because they were asking for that kind of thing.
Yep. And yeah, so they need a learning management system, but if you're going to take classes online, you absolutely need that. I also think about this is that when we talk about training or education in general, if you're teaching kindergartners, you assume that none of them know the alphabet. So I'm going to teach all of them the alphabet. None of them can count to 100. I'm going to teach all of them to count to 100. When you're working with adults, some will say, I understand this. I've been doing that for years. Okay, then to take these 2 modules to round it out. Somebody else might be a beginner and say, I don't know any of this. All right, you take all 6 modules. And I think you have to meet the people where they're at. And the difference between adult instruction and, say, children is there's always context for adults. So if I was to train you on something today, Cary, you would say, I'm coming at this with a lot of knowledge of logistics and supply chain. You're going to quickly see, oh, okay, I understand why this is that way. And it's a different way we learn. But I think that's super important that you be able to meet them where they're at. And every company can get a little bit of a customization on this training.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the other thing that goes hand in hand with that is this glossary of terms, right? So many terms in this industry, but being able to say, time out, I just was reading and I'm new and I read this training and it says Incoterms for the first time. I don't know what Incoterms is. So let me look up Incoterms and understand what that is. And they're able to do that instantly, and it doesn't break the flow of what they're trying to learn. And you need to be able to get at it easy and quickly. And that's one of the things we've learned that we need to have.
Yes. So I love what you guys are doing. And I think it's so important because we have a real challenge here as we're speaking here in July 2025 and almost August. And we're talking about under Joe Biden's administration, there was this CHIPS Act where we're bringing home chip manufacturing. The logistical challenges, all that, I don't know what they are, but I'm sure there's a whole new set of requirements.
Yeah.
But we're talking about bringing more stuff back to the United States, which is going to create brand new supply chains and brand new supply chain problems. And if we're going to bring teams to this, they're going to come from people who are mid-career shift. It's going to come from somebody who says, I don't want to go to college because I don't want to spend $100,000. I had 1 year of college and I have this opportunity.
Yeah.
We have to be able to meet all of these people where they're at. And then as we talk about stuff like AI, I don't know if you have a course in this yet, but I suspect it not long before you're going to say how we use AI in logistics, how we use AI in supply chain. It'll be some training, and I think that's what we need. We need the applied stuff, the stuff that allows us to exceed expectations in this current job, as opposed to, I'm rounding out my foundation of knowledge but it doesn't help me get my next raise.
Yeah. No, when you think of these 3PLs and forwarders and that intermediary, right? The company that's you're trusting as a customer to move your cargo from one spot to another. You got to trust them. You got to feel that they have the knowledge and the skills to make all that happen. And they are constantly competing for the supply chain business that's out there. And if I've learned anything else in this business, it's those that have the best solutions and follow through on those solutions, right, are the ones that are going to succeed. And it's having the right people trained and knowledgeable to support that business and those customers. And it's very clear to me when we start looking at customers' interest levels in the types of training that we're doing, those that are really embracing the training piece of it, you're not surprised in some cases.
Yep. Cary, I'm going to summarize what we talked about, then I will get your final thoughts on the topic. So I'm talking to my friend Cary Dittmann, and we're talking about the skill gap epidemic, how untrained workers are holding you back. And the first thing we talked about is companies not meeting business objectives. And the reason they're meeting the business objective is because their people don't have the attitude, skills, and knowledge required. Sometimes training is thrown in as go ahead and just train what we train because we train. It's not that. It's we train because we need something. This is an ROI. We're in a world that requires ROI. So if we're going to do the training, we're doing the training because there's a gap in our performance that we need to fill in. So first and foremost, we have people who don't have the attitude, skills, and knowledge because they come from different places. And even if they went to a supply chain program, they might, for college, they still might not have the skills that they need or the knowledge they need. Next, we talked about this idea of shared vision, shared knowledge, just a shared understanding of how the world works and what problems we solve and how we solve them. Training can fill in that gap. I don't want to find out that one of my teams is delivering in this way and the team down the hall delivers in a completely different way. And I also don't want to find out that the only people who know what they're doing can leave, right? I want to make sure that veteran or maybe even a young person understands how that customer works and no one else does. We can't have that. We talked a little bit about the case study about one of the customers you guys have already, a freight forwarder, and the problems they were suffering from and some of what you're doing for them. And again, I use the term just-in-time learning. I'm sure there's a lot of other ways to describe it. But anyway, Cary, put a big old bow on this. Final thoughts on the topic.
Yeah, no, thanks, Joe. That's a good summary. I would say our mission has been really to address all those key areas. Upskilling employees is key. And like I referenced earlier, there's some companies that look at this, we come in, they go, wow, we really need this. We don't do it. Can you help us? And part of it's just helping them get on the right path, no pun intended. And I think knowledge consistency is a big problem out there. And it's going to get worse before it gets better. Because of where people are going. That's your most valuable resource is the employees that you have. So keeping them up to speed, and the folks that today kind of get all that weight of being the tribal knowledge leader, it's going to get more difficult for them to kind of keep up. So we've got to get that foundational group, whether they're new coming into the organization or they're graduating to another level within the company, or they want to move somewhere else within the company. They need to have different skill sets and be able to do that. That's exactly what we are and what we're trying to do.
Yes, I love it. I love it. And I think in this business, we are dependent on our partners. So I think if you think about, if you're a freight broker, you say, we have our carrier partners, we have our transportation management partner, we have our visibility partner, we have our factoring partner. We're all very comfortable with partnerships. And I think a lot of people are outsourcing to the Philippines or to Colombia, and they say, oh, I'm very comfortable. I have an outsourcing partner that I work with. I think what you guys have with this learning management platform is just one more partner I'm going to need. You can pull together those PowerPoint slides on your own, but it's a lot harder. It's a lot harder to come up with the program, and you don't have a learning management system, which you need. And I think this is just a slam dunk. I think companies need to have a partner like FreightPath that says, yep, whatever you need education on, we're always creating new courses and we're going to help you solve the problems that are hitting you. And by the way, by the time you call and say, Cary, can you help me with this? Probably 5 other companies said, we have a problem with that, and we're developing a course on it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a unique point in time in our business. I still call it the perfect storm with where things are going with retirements and you think about this industry with the tariffs and changes that are going to happen in the supply chain. It's never a dull moment.
Oh, I think there are so many threats. You mentioned the tariffs. Forget the tariffs. I think are going to straighten themselves out at some point, but it creates some uncertainty. But we've had some down times since the end of COVID. But on top of that, I just feel like the bar gets higher and higher for what we need to perform at. And we're going to be bringing people in mid-career like we always have. We're going to bring people in who are green right out of high school, right out of college. And I think they all have to get on the same page. And it's a great program you guys have. Again, I will make sure I put a link to your LinkedIn profile, link to your website, any other links you and your marketing team give me. I'll put those in the show notes. Cary, what conferences will we see you and the fine folks from FreightPath at?
We're absolutely going to be in full attendance at the EDGE conference in October, the 5th through the 8th. CSCMP. It's a mouthful, but it's a great organization. We're excited about that. For all the things I mentioned before on the donations, both the high schools, the colleges, junior colleges, even veterans programs that they reach out to, adult learning as well. That's one. IANA, which is coming up here on the West Coast.
That's the Intermodal Association in North America.
Yes.
And that's out in Long Beach in September.
Yes, you're defining all the acronyms I'm throwing at you there. So that's good.
I'm going to the conference. I just interviewed Ann Renke over here.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We spoke with her recently as well. That's another good example of how do you bring more awareness through training for that whole intermodal sector of the business. That's a big deal for them. And I think there's a lot of people that some understand it and some don't. But how do you bring it to the forefront?
Yep. I know you guys go to TPM and Manifest too.
TPM
Manifest is next February.
Yes. That's around the block. But that is an absolute one that we've attended in the past, and Manifest. So we're going to look at that as well.
Cary, I'm going to talk about the dumbest thing I ever did, which was last year at the CSCMP. You guys asked me, hey, Joe, would you come moderate our panel discussion at CSCMP? And I said, oh, yeah, hell yes. I was honored. I made my reservations with the airline, and I got out there, flew from Detroit to Nashville, and I got to the hotel, which is beautiful. It's the Gaylord. And I went to the gym, worked out, took a shower, put my clothes in the shower so they all get de-wrinkled, hung them all up. I answered some emails. And then I sauntered on down to the first night of the conference. It was a Sunday night. And I couldn't find you guys. And finally, I pulled out my phone. I was going to call one of you or John Delgado. And as I picked up my phone, there was a gal who walked by from the Gaylord. And I said, where is the CSCMP Edge conference? And she goes, oh, it'll be right here next Sunday. I come a week early. And I could not believe it. I walked back to my room in a trance. I could not believe how dumb that was. And then as I came out of my trance, I realized I got to get back to Detroit. Oh, I got home late that night.
So you did a scoping session. That's all you did. So you're good.
And then the guy who drove me to the airport, he says, you seem a little stressed. I go, I'm hoping to catch this flight and it's going to be tight. I ultimately missed it. And then I told him what I did. And he goes, oh, that's crazy. He goes, hey, I got a personal question for you. Are you going to tell anyone? I thought,
I'm telling everybody.
that's a good point. I don't have to say anything, but I ended up telling everybody. And then as CSCMP was ending, I was leaving your booth and you go, see you, Joe. You coming back next week?
That's right. I know you told me, and I didn't want to bring it up on this call, on this podcast, but
yeah,
you did. It happens. It's happened to me before.
Oh yeah. By the way, the guy in the cab said, "Oh, we got people." That was in Nashville, and he said we had a guy at our front desk, very angry, demanding his room that we didn't have. And then they looked him up in the system and said, "You're supposed to be in Memphis." He goes, "Where am I?" He said, "You're in Nashville."
Oh my gosh. Yep.
Anyway, enough of my blather. It was a pleasure talking to you, Cary, and I love what you guys are doing. Again, I'll put all those links in the show notes so people can reach out and talk to you guys, and hopefully see you at some of these conferences.
Looking forward to it, Joe. Thanks for hosting me.
Thank you so much, Cary, and thank all of you for listening to my podcast. Your support's very much appreciated. Until next time, onward and upward. You have been listening to the Logistics of Logistics podcast, where we engage with leaders in the logistics and supply chain community. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, hit the like button, and leave us a nice review on Apple or Spotify or wherever else you listen. Also, please check out our videos on YouTube and connect with us on LinkedIn. We're very big on LinkedIn. And you can also reach us on the logisticsoflogistics.com, our website.